Okay. Call to order the meeting of the Freeport Project Review Board for September 23rd, and we have a quorum, and we might have Lynn adding to our group by Zoom. You have staff update for us?
Sure, I do. So the planning board just had a big public workshop on the first draft of zoning ordinance text pertaining to the implementation of LD 2003. Cecilia had to mail 3,500 postcards to invite the community to that meeting due to the planning board's public notification policy. So those discussions are going to continue. It's going to require changes to the zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and shoreland zoning ordinance, all to hopefully be wrapped up and implemented by January 1. It has been taking up a lot of the planning board's time. They also recently made some amendments to the zoning and subdivision ordinance and a couple other municipal ordinances that pertain to the requirement for erosion control plans for certain projects, and this is required as part of our DEP permitting with the state of Maine. Those went before the council to set the hearing last night, and those will be before council October 3rd, so you might have updated versions of the ordinance by the middle of October, just to reflect some of the stormwater standards, the erosion control plan standards. One of the things that went in there is just adding a requirement that they submit a plan, even though we usually get them, and just putting that in the appropriate sections of the subdivision and site plan ordinance, and then setting a minimum. So any project that disturbs 5,000 square feet or greater would have that requirement up front that they submit a plan. So there'll be more information coming on that. The Downtown Vision Task Force Implementation Group didn't meet last month. We continue to work on a climate action plan. We're continuing to work with GP-COG. At this point, before the council for consideration was some numbers to consider for setting targets for greenhouse gas emissions. Setting those targets would help us in the planning process at the next community input session to identify some goals and implementation strategies for how we're going to achieve those targets. The council was not ready to make a decision in one meeting, so they will be taking that item up, I believe, at the October 3rd meeting, if anyone is interested in that. They definitely are interested in input from the community on what those targets might be, if anyone's interested in participating in that. Ford, do you want to jump over to you for number 4? The
Sure.
Central Core Working Group?
I think most of us were at the meeting at the town library about a month ago when the Housing Task Force presented their plan to the council, and it was a well-attended public hearing, and I think it ended positively with a lot of consensus to move quickly through some zoning changes. And so the council put together a committee of several committee chairs, which is called the Central Core Working Group. And we've had 3 meetings now, and everyone's going in the same direction. There's a short list of what we're calling the low-hanging fruit for some ordinance changes that are just mechanically clunky and can be easily improved. Some that have real substance, like what to do to make the design review ordinance more objective. I think at the meeting next Wednesday, there are going to be recommendations for the first time for the group to look at for discussed reduction of the design review district 1, which would be theoretically shrinking that. Looking more closely at a sample design review ordinance from Bar Harbor, which we've already seen, and it's kind of, I think, goes in the right direction. And discussions about specific items that could be delegated to staff to try to keep some things within the staff review and not coming here.
One of the recommendations that came out of today's meeting that there was pretty solid consensus on is bringing forward consideration to remove the color overlay district. The group feels that as written, it's not that effective. So that's one other change that came out of today's working group.
It does keep
meeting.
color among our considerations.
If something's coming before you.
Yeah. But you know how the process works. It's the planning board that makes recommendations, not us. The council approves them, but I will update this board as soon as anything comes out that looks like the planning board's going to act on it.
Actually, what's the most effective way to communicate suggestions to that group?
I actually got an email that was in the materials that were distributed today that a member of the public had some thoughts, so they emailed them to me. So if you have some personal thoughts commenting on your own ideas, you could email it to me. I'll be happy to share it with the group. Right now, they're going to meet once a week on Wednesday. So when I get it, I'll share it.
And some people have actually been attending the meetings, but certainly input's welcome.
They're hybrid meetings. They're a little bit clunky because we sit down here in a U shape and everyone's like, Ford is the camera person, so he'll do that. But I think if you want to listen in, like, you know, even if you can't be there, if you want to listen in, you definitely can. We have to watch quorum issues. We know we don't, it's not really designed to have three or more, but.
I have a pretty prominent role on the committee. Today I did the camera, and I also ran the switch for the ceiling fans.
Is it recorded?
We have an audio recording. Yeah, we don't have minutes or anything. But yeah, I think when the group was formed, one of the important things we realized is the people on the committee need to be spreading the word back to the committees that they're there representing, which is really diverse. We have Project Review Board, we have Planning Board, we have Linda's on there for the Social Racial Equity Committee, we have Council, we have Economic Development, so there's really a diverse group of people, and we have a developer and a couple residents. So there's a good mix.
What's the process once the core working group comes up with its recommendation? How's the process until it actually gets implemented, and the timing too?
So the timing is really quick. They're hoping to get some low-hanging fruit changes before the council for consideration. Right now, they're really just looking at design review. So if it goes planning board or straight to council, that's a little bit up in the air. As they go into other ordinances, like legally zoning, the way we're set up has to go through planning board and then to council. So it's going to depend on the different ordinances that they're working on. But the goal is to get something for design review, some low-hanging fruit to this current council before their turnover in November.
And I'll get a note out to you folks for what those look like. But it's our board more than any other board that lives with these or works with these ordinances, and I don't feel like there's anything coming along that's going to be a surprise to anybody.
And once council approves, are they effective immediately? Or
Yeah,
is it?
typically, not always, but yeah, they're typically effective immediately. And I think Ford, you've done a good job on representing the board's opinion on certain things. Like, for example, you guys had talked about accessibility ramps, and I think Linda brought that up too. So although this kind of got reinvigorated from a community discussion pertaining to mixed use and housing, the people that use the ordinance every day know that it's more than just that. There's some other things in here. So I feel like both of you have been bringing some of those up, things that this board's kind of already flagged that could be low-hanging fruit.
Is it possible to, join a list that's sending out like meeting materials, just to kind of stay in touch with?
Yeah, really all we've
Details.
been like sending so far is agendas.
Okay.
Like today we sent a list, but yeah, we can find a way to do that.
Yeah,
as we get
the Bar
stuff
Harbor
together.
sample ordinance has not been distributed within with that working group we're talking about, but I've seen it, and I'd be happy to send that along as well.
To the extent to when there are,
Yeah,
drafts
when
and
we-
kind of
yeah,
substantive
sure.
materials, being at least having the opportunity to kind of
See
review
what's
those would be
talking about.
helpful to
Yep.
provide feedback
give
to
some
the extent it's
comments.
relevant.
The
Yeah, so-
reason I asked about the recording, if other people, not board-related, ask if there's some way to see it, we could say,
Yeah.
I don't know how that would happen.
So working groups, we usually keep audio recording or minutes so they could reach out to cable TV to get
Okay.
a recording. Like we don't have Sharon there obviously, and we can't televise, so it makes it a little bit challenging, but we have that. Or, if somebody wanted to start taking notes, Linda or Ford, we could have
Stop
that too.
volunteering.
There's a lot that goes into that hour.
Yeah, but you're already camera person, you established that, so. And then an update on the Freeport comprehensive plan. So we put the RFP out for comprehensive plan consultants. Our comprehensive plan is good for about 11 years. Our consistency is going to expire, so that means that we still have a comp plan. It's still the most current one, but it kind of goes into this unknown status. So we, like many other communities around here, are updating our comprehensive plan. We put out the RFP. We got 4 consultants to respond. We have, yet again, we're trying to take a collaborative approach to an interview committee. So we have 2 members of the PRB, Jim and Ford. We have 2 members of planning board, 2 members of council, and then we have 3 staff members who will be conducting interviews. So we're going to interview all 4 candidates. We have 2 interviews tomorrow, 2 interviews on Monday, and then if we need a wrap up or regroup next Tuesday, we'll do that. I think depending on the outcome of the interviews, we could either do a second round or make a recommendation to the council. Due to the budget amount being over $100,000, that contract would have to go to the council to be awarded. And then I'll just note one other thing for community members. On the table over there tonight, there's a handout for Community Voices Forum. This really isn't related to stuff that you do, but it impacts the whole community. It was just rolling out last night. So unfortunately, we've had a couple of occurrences of offensive graffiti found in Freeport. And so we're getting a lot of outreach from different members of the community that obviously are concerned, offended, raising good questions. And it seems like we need the opportunity to come together again and discuss this, because I think there's been 4 cases that have recently been coming up. So tomorrow at 4 o'clock,
Friday.
I keep thinking it's Thursday, thank you. Friday at 4 o'clock out front at Town Hall, there's gonna be an informal opportunity just to gather outside and for people to share their thoughts. Some of the council will be there. We'll have somebody from the police department there, and the public's welcome to attend. It's really just a opportunity to get a conversation started in a casual gathering. We know everyone's busy. It was on short notice, but it seems that there's some conversations that people really want to get started. So we felt like it was important to give a setting for that to occur. So there's a flyer over there, and some people might have seen it floating around. It's on short notice, so I figured people here might not have heard about it. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I can't be there Friday, I'm sorry. Review and approval of the PRB meeting minutes from August 16. Has everyone read them, and are there any comments? Suggested changes? Is there a motion to approve them as presented?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? We don't
Aye.
need to do roll call vote.
Abstain?
And Lynn just joined
Oh,
on.
here's Lynn. Hi, Lynn. So we have to do a roll call vote now?
I think you just took a vote. I think you can reflect in the minutes that
Okay.
they voted, Lynn joined, and she'll be here. And now, yes, you need to do a roll call vote. Lynn, can you hear us okay? Okay. All right.
I need to do a roll call vote for that?
No.
Okay.
I abstain on that vote. I wasn't here.
Yep. Sharon, did you get that abstention?
First agenda item is 174 Lower Main Street, Design Review Certificate for Solar Panels.
So the applicant, our property owner, Andy Wilbur, is here tonight. Down at the chocolate factory on Lower Main Street, they have one section of the building that already has solar panels on the roof. They want to add solar panels to do 2 additional sections, 2 of which are facing the road. Because it's visible from Meeting House and/or Lower Main Street, it's subject to design review for material change. We're seeing a lot more of these, so I'll leave it at that if anybody has questions. Otherwise, you have standard findings in front of you that you've been having when you have solar panels.
Great. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think Caroline pretty much summarized, we've done one solar installation, we had a second one that we are scheduled and planned, and two of the elements of the installation are visible from, one from Lower Main Street and one from Meeting House, so they're subject to design review. I'm not sure, I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything about the project, but it's just a
request to be able to do that installation.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Anyone from the public have any questions or comments for the applicant? Lynn, you good?
Lynn, you'll need to unmute when you talk.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, I don't know where the motions are at the moment, but
That'd be
to
because somebody
approve.
forgot page numbers, page 3.
It's,
Bottom.
hold
Here you go.
on, okay. Okay, be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Andy Wilbur for exterior alterations at 174 Lower Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 8, Lot 4A, to be substantially as proposed, application dated 8/28/2023, finding that it meets the standards of Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to any construction, the applicant obtain a building permit for the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer. That's it.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Any discussion?
Can I just ask a question for clarification? So it looks like this approval is going in the name of Mr. Wilbur individually. I just want to double check that that is in fact the right name for which it's not an entity, it's not. For example, the project is identified as being on behalf of Wilbur's of Maine. I just want to make sure we're issuing a permit to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could put
Person.
Andy Wilbur, comma, Wilbur's of Maine in there.
Okay. What's the name of the property owner?
It's actually FCW LLC.
Doesn't it need to be all three? I mean,
We haven't always done that. We've done the applicant. In this case, it's a family LLC, but I think it's fine to put
okay.
any of them if you want.
Just
in
to be
this
clear
case.
that we're,
Yeah.
that the permit is to the property, not necessarily to the individual.
Yeah, it does. We don't always do it to the property owner because in a lot of cases, it's like a tenant relationship. In this case, I think you can make it out to any of them. But we do always put the specific address in the map and lot for that purpose. So.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, is somebody making a friendly amendment or no to change that? Or are you keeping it Andy Wilbur?
Well, I think it would make sense to at least add for clarification that it's Andrew Wilbur, Wilbur's of Maine.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay.
Okay, so we're voting on the motion with that amendment. Roll call vote. Berger?
Yes?
Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Lynn is having some technical difficulties. You want to come back to her?
Madeira?
Okay.
Sorry, I've been having computer problems.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, did you hear the motion, Lennon, that you prepared to vote?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki, yes, and Yankee is absent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Second agenda item is Tri-Town Little League, Hunter Road Fields for a site plan amendment.
So this is actually a property that is owned by the town of Freeport, the Hunter Road Fields Complex. Tri-Town Little League is the applicant in this case. During the budget season, well, let me rewind, sorry. Back in March, Tri-Town Little League went to the Hunter Road Fields Committee and expressed that they wanted to add some dugouts, wood frame dugouts at Hunter Road Fields. They then made a budgetary request to the council, and during budget season, the council was made aware of this project and supported the project by funding dugouts, and then Tri-Town is also contributing. So they got the approvals from those two parties to come forward for a site plan amendment. Typically, this kind of site plan amendment, if it weren't for the town of Freeport, would either, it'd be a little bit over staff approval, but it could go to staff review board. For transparency, when we made the last round of revisions to section 602, site plan review, we made it so that any municipal projects do need to come before the project review board. So Tri-Town wants to add 6 wood dugouts in the existing developed area at the Hunter Road Fields. There's some chain link dugouts there now, and they want to, in that same approximate location, add the wood dugouts. As part of our general agenda circulation, we have over 100 subscribers that get your agendas delivered to their inbox. One of those being Alpha One, who is an agency in Portland that looks at a lot of plans and works with a lot of public and private sector clients regarding accessibility. So they did look at this and question accessibility and room for wheelchairs. In this case, other accessibility improvements were not proposed because they weren't altering existing routes and due to for pedestrian and vehicular circulation, and due to the dollar value. That being said, you had some initial comments from Alpha One in your packet. Brian Steele, on behalf of Tri-Town Little League, did reach out to Jill Johanning for some advice. So you got a supplemental package yesterday, and in there were 2 things. One was a plan that had some blue lines on it, and that blue line showed how those dugouts would connect to any pathways. That being said, the town is aware that when Hunter Road Facilities was constructed, there's some improvements that need to be made so that the ball field area is accessible. Those, as a side note, have been budgeted and would be a separate municipal project, but I will note that for you because there was a plan shown as how all of this would be tied together once those additional improvements are made. You had a second plan sheet in there, which is kind of a zoom in of the dugout. So the original site plan submitted shows the location of the 6 dugouts. You have a new detail on the dugout, which I can pull up for you. Based upon their conversation with Jill Johanning, they are proposing to slightly modify the design of the dugout to accommodate space for, you can see it on the screen too, somebody that does need a little more space or that might be in a wheelchair. And you can see they're also proposing this area that's colored in brown, a new ADA compliant stone dust pathway, so somebody could come in. There'd be fencing around the back corner, and then they could wheel right into the new dugout, which would be in a concrete pad. The town engineer has not had a chance to look at this plan. You can't just put down stone dust when you're trying to create accessible path. We do need to look at things like grade and make sure there's adequate turning radius. So he has seen this, and we did talk about it today. I think if you are ready to take action on this plan, you would maybe just want to add a condition that the design of the stone dust access pathway abutting each of the dugouts be reviewed by the town engineer to make sure that the grades work. Little League is lined up and waiting to get started on all this work, so this is time sensitive for them before the ground freezes. The only other thing I will note is, in the plan that originally came in, it did show a concrete pad kind of in the center of the fields. That wasn't something discussed with the council. It wasn't something that came up before the Hunter Road Fields in a public session yet. So your approval tonight, because that hasn't been approved by the people that oversee or would have to grant right, title, and interest, would not include that tonight. And Mr. Steele is here on behalf of Tri-Town Little League to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mr. Steele. You got any comments?
No, I think Caroline did a great job summarizing kind of the progress of where we've been and where we've come from and where we are today. We're really excited. I've got 4 of my board members here to help support and answer questions if I can't. We really want to bring this to the Hunter Road facility, not only for protection, overhead protection from rain, foul balls from the kids, but also make a much more usable walking surface. Right now, the dugouts get filled with mud and overgrown grass and benches that aren't really well-placed, and this will be a major improvement for the Little League and a huge step towards kind of upgrading the overall facility.
Any questions for the applicant?
I just want to clarify on the ADA changes, that's for all 6 of the dugouts? Is that
Correct.
And you do have a hand up on Zoom as well.
Any other questions from the board?
I just wanted to ask if there's any lighting work involved in?
There's zero lights, zero electrical out there right now, currently.
Lynn, you had something?
No. No.
To what extent are the existing dugouts ADA compliant?
They are definitely not. There are earthen floors, so it was originally probably grass or clay, and it's overgrown, so you couldn't get a wheelchair in there. They're only 6 feet wide right now with a bench. We're making them 8 feet wide with about a 5.5-foot corridor. So, and they're all going to be brushed, broomed surfaces. It's an 8-inch slab, so it'll be slip resistant. We're going to bring all the new stone dust up so that there's no less than a 1/4 of an inch lip to the entrance, and then it'll also have this space that'll be available. And each dugout, all 6 dugouts will have a handicap location for a wheelchair to park.
And what does the siding look like? You're putting a...
The siding, right. So there's some pictures, I drew some hand sketches of the siding. Right now, we're trying to mimic the other buildings on site, which are a variety of sidings. The main building has a wainscoting exterior up to like a 3-foot brick ledge type of thing, and then it's got shingles and a green roof, and then the sheds are T111 siding. They're all painted with a similar paint color, although they definitely need a paint job. So we're going to use, the plan is to step up from T111 and use shiplap siding, which will match the wainscoting detail of the main field house. And then we're going to paint it to match the existing structures, including the roof will have not all the roofs on the field are the same, but the main field house is a green colored roof. And so we're going to use the same asphalt architectural shingles on that.
It looked nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're putting a lot of thought into it. Do you have a schedule on the paths?
The paths, I need to work with Adam and Caroline. I would love to get them in as soon as possible. My guy who we've hired to do the excavation work is also capable of doing the paths. I guess things that need to be decided is like location of them. We probably need a true grading plan created, professional civil site drawings that are ADA to show an engineer and architect have looked at all the possibilities within the ADA code requirements and other codes. So as soon as the town releases the schedule for that, I'm happy to help as much as possible, organizing it and helping run it. I've been in touch with the Hunter Road Committee about it, trying to get them on board to lead the charge, essentially. We want it as soon as possible. When I talked with Jill, she mentioned that, yes, it's up to the town to approve this current design because it meets her requirement, but it'll be up to the town to move forward with other path, the accessibility path.
So Ford, when you ask that question, you're talking about the paths beyond just the dugout, the path connecting the parking
Everything that's
to
in
the
blue.
entire area. Yes, so my understanding, this issue was identified a while back. I'm not sure why it hasn't been proceeded with at this point, I guess is the answer. I did check with the engineer today. He said we do have funding. The first thing would be to obviously get the engineering because the grades are important to make sure this is all done properly. And then see if we have the funding to go forward or need to request additional funding through the plan or the capital improvement planning probably process. So he expected that this would be a winter RFP for engineering work on this project.
Great. Thank you.
Just a question to clarify, to what extent are these ADA design components required? Or as opposed to being like an optional choice that this
Yeah,
applicant has pursued?
I don't know why they weren't installed when the fields were originally done. I say the fields aren't that old, but it was probably longer than I remember. Tom Ross is on here. He was involved. He could probably give us a better date when he comments, but it has to do with like a dollar value of overall improvements. I had the code enforcement officer look at it, and he didn't feel like they weren't, if they were proposing changes to that path, then we would be looking at them now. Where they weren't proposing changes due to the overall dollar value, he didn't feel like they were triggering the need to bring all the paths up. Right now, honestly, it could potentially cost more than this project itself, because my understanding is it does need quite a bit of grading out there and ditching and some other things.
And I think that's the concern, that if, not so much for, we want to extrapolate it beyond this project, but if a small effort then becomes a much larger effort, that its ability to go forward is subject to, a larger capital outlay and potentially prevents the project from happening, that would be concerning.
This project isn't triggering the need for the accessible paths throughout the complex to be created due to the dollar value. That being said, the paths have already been flagged as something that, in other issues out there, accessibility improvements that need to be made. In this case, we had a group come forward for a dugout project partially with a volunteer effort. In the ideal world, I think we would have done other site improvements before, but they're two independent yet related projects. I think they're one step ahead, trying to design these dugouts in a way so that when this other project takes place, somebody will be able to come into the site, get there, and use the dugouts as they're designed today. Jill Johanning from Alpha One gave a great example. Like, we have some older coaches, and some of them could be in wheelchairs, and so this is a great space for them. And if there's nobody there that needs that extra space, you sure need it for a bag, a baseball bag with all the bats. So it could be multi-purpose. And again, you guys do have a hand up on Zoom.
Any other questions from the board? Linda?
Yeah, you mentioned these concrete pads that you said are not going to be included. They're in various places. There's mention of concrete pads on their plans.
The one in the center that showed for like possible future use is the one that wouldn't be going forward at this point in time. It's kind of where all the fields meet.
The other 6 are parts of the dugouts.
Yeah, the other 6 are where the existing dugouts are. And they're gonna put the concrete pad up, take the fence down, put the concrete pad, and relocate fence and put the stone dust path.
This other concrete pad is for a storage shed to be built in the future? Is that the
I
right label?
can't read the label. There was a label on there for future.
The future one would be, ideally would be a concession stand.
Concession stand?
Yeah, so that
We
one,
have, one of the dugouts is a little bit larger to provide covered storage.
Okay.
so you see the one in the middle that
Yeah.
has the note? That one is not part of this because that hasn't been before Hunter Road or Council.
Okay.
And that, depending what they were gonna do with that in the future, that could warrant other associated improvements with it.
So is that on the final plan that needs to come off, or just
Yeah, we would
the
remove,
statement?
we
I
would
think-
remove it.
You could note it in your motion too, just to be clear.
Open up this is not a public hearing, but we welcome public input. If anyone has a comment or question for the applicant.
You wanna do the room or Zoom first?
I think everyone here is on the board. Is there anyone in the room who has a question or comment?
Okay, so we'll go over to Zoom. Tom, we're gonna bring you over to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. Hey, I just wanted to share with you, I think that the dugouts are a great idea, and you probably think I'm Mr. Negative Nelly, and I'm not. But I was a little taken aback about like approving things that weren't like the pads and, oh, we'll just do this and do this later. I guess I'm a little worried about mission creep and the whole of the whole property. And I know there's already a snack bar building within 100 yards of the maybe 50 yards of one of the baseball fields now. And I appreciate whatever council or whatever board member brought up the question about lights. I'm also concerned about, this, it's just the dugouts are not the thing, but I'm concerned about, let's go take over the remaining blueberry field that was discussed at the community charrette in 2012 on September 27th, that the town overwhelmingly wanted to maintain those blueberry fields. And, lights and hours of operation. I guess I'm just a little concerned about approving things before we see them. And that's just my 2 cents worth. I hope that doesn't put any damper on anything. I think it would be great to have ADA dugouts, and I've coached Little League here 25 years ago. I was in all of those old facilities, and it's great to have this new one here. So that's just my 2 cents.
Do you want me to respond to that?
No, good. Any other comments? Any further questions from the board? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll read it. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings and fact and site plan amendment for Tri-Town Little League Incorporated for 6 new dugouts and associated site improvements at Hunter Road Fields, 96 Hunter Road, Tax Assessor Map 22, Lot 52, to be built substantially as proposed, application dated September 12th, 2023, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer. 3, with the added condition of ADA compliance for an accessible route as informed by forthcoming town engineer review and comments. 4, the applicant will remove the center concrete pad presumed for concessions that has not been reviewed or approved by town council.
I just want to know, remove from the plan, maybe, because it's not physically there.
Yes. Okay.
And then the engineer review at this point in time, if there's a subsequent overall look at the path, which we said, is funded, that would be a separate project. In this case, it's only the stone dust path directly abutting each of the 6 dugouts. So I think you might need to clarify that a little bit.
So the engineer will be reviewing only the path. That's where I was thinking the accessible route was the...
It's only the portion of the accessible route surrounding the dugout.
So
It's-
outside the boundary.
Yeah,
the
it's
rest is
not,
greenfield, the field.
it's not from like the parking lot to the dugout.
Okay.
Or you could say, maybe what you could say, is there a date on that plan? There, the new detail, the town engineer review the updated plan provided by the applicant that shows a stone dust path surrounding each of the dugouts, maybe?
That sounds good.
I just want to make sure we're super clear.
I guess, I thought the blue lines were part of what they had to review, but is that not?
No, the blue lines would show, if improvements are made to the overall ADA
Okay.
paths and just pedestrian circulation on the site. Yeah, that there's no approval, there's no engineering, there's no grading. It's just these brown areas of paths abutting the
Okay, so I would change item number 3 to be the added condition of ADA compliant materials around the dugout areas as indicated by the sketch provided by the applicant.
Be reviewed by the town engineer.
To be reviewed by the town engineer, yes.
And your 4th condition is as stated?
Except from the plans to be added.
You get that, Sharon?
I got it.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion by the board? Okay, roll call vote. Berger?
Yes.
Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Lynn, you're on mute.
Lip read.
Looks like yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get that last agenda item.
That was inadvertently left
I was
on.
going to say, kind of, it's our perennial last item.
That's my bad.
Is there any, before we think about a motion to adjourn, is there anything else anyone has?
Can I just make a comment that I'm interested in exploring further? I think we've touched on this before, but I want to clarify what the pathway to moving forward is. It appears that the gritty sign is in plain violation of the terms that this board has imposed on its permit of that material. Both in operation after hours, in the color lettering scheme that was imposed, in the apparent brightness relative to other signs, and in the kind of the frequency of motion. I think, and I just wanted to just put it on your radar to the extent that wasn't already, and otherwise understand to what extent this board plays any role in enforcement.
So obviously with one code enforcement officer, an entire municipality, there's a long list of enforcement issues. Life safety obviously takes priority over everything else. I think in this case, I'd be happy to send a friendly reminder to the applicant of what the conditions of that approval were, and we can see, we can talk about it again next month and see if anything, we notice a change.
That would be good. After Jim raised it at the 2 meetings ago, it caught my attention as well.
Yeah, we've talked about it internally, and like I said, just in the big list of enforcement, I feel like a friendly reminder could maybe go a long way.
Do you have those conditions or that approval that you could just send around? Because I don't recall the exact language, so I'd
Yeah,
just
we
like to
have
know.
minutes, and we generate a notice of decision that we have to provide to the applicant for every decision that you guys make. So we can send that.
Thank you.
I'll send it for reviewing, but please nobody respond and comment.
Okay, great. Is there a motion, anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn? No. Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call vote. Berger?
Yes?
Donahue?
Yes.
Hamlin?
Yes.
Madeira?
Yes.
Monteleone?
Yes.
Reiki? Yankee, no. Not present. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we've had a sub-hour meeting.
I know.
Ford, I just want to defend your time tonight, because back when you had the shortest time, we didn't talk about all these things under info
know.
exchange, so I just
know.
don't
just
know that
shouldn't
you
have done
can
it.
do it again. In fairness to you, maybe you should
Right.
start the clock after info exchange?
We could say the